I'm on my way round to the garage where I store Esther. Both the indicators are flashing. So I haven't got the wiring correct. So I've had some parts through the post, uncovered some dimples here in the surface. The input shaft was locating into the spigot bearing, but only just. This bearing does feel a bit rough. Should be able to get a spanner on it. And then when you press your clutch, it just moves the arm like this. So cut those bits out of the tunnel, then new centre spline section. John's latest acquisition. Hello and welcome to this video. I'm Marcus Hayes and today I'm on my way round to the garage where I store Esther, my ST170 powered Mk1 Escort, to start getting her ST170 engine ready to go back in the engine bay, including solving some of the things that I found wrong with her RX-8 gearbox conversion. Now I think the only thing I need to actually get the engine fully ready to go back in is the clutch plate, which I actually sent to Helix Motorsport, who are the guys that manufactured that unsprung paddle clutch, and they've been able to put a new centre spline piece on it for me for just £45 plus VAT and plus carriage back to me. So I think it came to £72 in total. I actually paid that today and they said that that should arrive tomorrow. But there's plenty of other bits to crack on with in terms of getting the engine ready to go back in the bay. I've also made up the extension for the wiring harness for her new dash. So yeah, hoping to get the dash fully installed. There is one thing in particular that some of you guys said I should check. So yeah, fingers crossed I've got that right. If not, that'll be another thing I need to solve. But yeah, I don't have loads of time because I need to get this car back so that my beautiful girlfriend Kat can go to work tonight. She's doing night shift this week. But you know, the weather's good and I'm hoping to make at least some progress around the garage today. I'm excited to announce the release of all this new official Marcus Hayes clothing. The pre-order for all these new bits is live now and it will end on the date and time at the bottom of the screen now. I know the pre-orders are a bit annoying, but for all you guys that do jump on the pre-order, I'm going to give you 10% off of all these new bits, and I should have everything delivered to everyone about 3 weeks after the end of the pre-order. We've got zip-up hoodies in grey, black and royal blue. We've got t-shirts in grey, black and royal blue. We've also got normal hoodies in grey, black and royal blue, and snapback caps in royal blue and black. Now, loads of people always miss out whenever I do a pre-order because realistically, after the pre-order, if any of these bits are going to be available, it's only going to be the more popular garments in the more popular sizes. So to make sure you don't miss out, definitely jump on the pre-order on my website at marcushayesuk.com. The embroidery, as usual, is awesome. On the grey bits, we've got the full logo. The zip-up hoodies in grey with the full logo is technically a re-release because that was out before. The black bits have got this new variation on my logo, which I'm calling the signature collection. And the blue bits have been embroidered with the MH logo. So head over to my website and place your orders before the pre-order runs out. And I want to send a massive thanks in advance to anyone who does decide to grab some bits. But with all that being said, it's back to the video. All right, we have made it, and I've got Esther out of her garage, and I've got her engine out of my dad's garage, and I've got my spare RX-8 gearbox out of my dad's garage as well. But before we crack on with all of that lot, there is something I've found wrong with her dash wiring, and it's actually something that loads of you guys predicted in the comments of the last video I filmed on this car. So I've temporarily wired up the battery, and if we go into the cockpit, you can see that I've sort of part wired up the new dash using my new extension. I haven't put the block on the other end of that extension. I want to fully make sure that I've got all the wires in the right order before I do that. But for now, I've got the power wired up. There's actually 2 power wires on this dash, and I've got the negative wired up. There's also 2 negatives, and I've got the indicator wire hooked up. The indicator bulb was slightly differently wired up on the old dash than it is on the new dash, and I thought I'd really simply manage to wire it up, but that's not the case. Because if I turn the ignition on and then flick the indicator on, you'll see that the indicator bulb does flash on the dash, but as predicted by loads of you, if we go round to the back, you'll see that both the indicators are flashing. So I haven't got the wiring correct at all. Now, one of you guys in the comments of the recent video said that I need to hook up some diodes into the wiring. So yeah, I need to look into that. I'm not going to be doing it today, but yeah, if that is you that mentioned about the diodes, if you are willing to send me a little diagram via email, that'd be really helpful. My email address, as always, is in the description of this video. Alright, so I've had some parts through the post. I got this lot from my friends at BURTON Power. I'll leave a link to their website in the description. And we've got a brand new spigot bearing for the crank. Got a brand new rear crank seal. Got a brand new sump gasket. Not sure if I'm going to fit that, to be honest, because I can do that with the engine in situ. And I've got a new set of ARP flywheel bolts, because I don't think you can reuse them. So even though I had ARP ones before, I've decided to get a brand new set. Now also over here, I've got a brand new adapter plate, and that was from RX8 Gearbox Adapters UK. I'll leave all their links in the description as well. Definitely get in touch with them if you're considering an RX8 gearbox conversion for your car. They do plates for a wide range of engines, and they're always adding new engines to their range of plates. Over here, I've got my Turbo Sport flywheel, which was skimmed by Carlo, the precision engineer. He actually uncovered some dimples here in the surface, and he was saying to me that this flywheel might not be able to be skimmed again in the future, and those dimples are actually the backs of these holes where the flywheel is made to be super light. But you know, it hasn't broken through, and he said it wouldn't have been a massive issue if he did break through, but he was able to skim it so that it was perfectly flat without breaking through to them. So yeah, nice refaced light flywheel going on. And Carlo also made up this dowel, which is the same as the dowels that come with the adapter plate, except it's got a hex on it, which makes it a bit easier to fit and remove. As I mentioned on the way down here, I'm still waiting for the clutch to come back from Helix Motorsport, but yeah, we've got plenty to crack on with here, and hopefully we'll be able to solve some of the issues I identified in the video when we took Esther apart. Now, the first thing I want to do is replace this spigot bearing. Before I do that, I just want to test to see how well the spigot bearing supports the input shaft of the gearbox in its current position. Now, this is actually a few millimeters out from where it was when this engine was in the car, but yeah, it is only a few millimeters. So I'm thinking when I put the new one in, I should have it flush or maybe even protruding slightly. But yeah, I just want to see if that does support the input shaft of the gearbox, because if it doesn't, that could have been the main issue that was causing my clutch to get damaged. And because I've removed the clutch arm from this spare gearbox, I should be able to look through here and see if the input shaft is locating into the spigot bearing, and by how much. All right, so I'll tighten this plate back up temporarily. As it turns out, the input shaft was locating into the spigot bearing, but only just. To remove the bearing, I poked a load of grease into the middle of it, and then I used a spare input shaft and a hammer to force the grease in, which then forced the bearing out. This bearing does feel a bit rough, and I think it was in the wrong way. After a quick clean, it was time to install the new bearing, and I decided to use Loctite on the outer edge of it. I tapped the new bearing in, making sure that it was dead straight, and I left it protruding slightly to give me better location on the input shaft. Next up, new rear main seal. I'm hoping I'll be able to scoop the old one out with this pick thing, and it's worked. I can definitely see a little bit of a trace of oil down here. That might not necessarily mean that that's where the oil was coming from. It was either coming from that seal or the sump gasket. Just put a tiny trace of grease just on the inside of this. I don't want it to like fold inside out when I'm trying to install it. I like to leave the outside dry. Sweet, Next to go on was the brand new adapter plate, so off came the old one. And I gave the engine a bit of a clean before fitting the new one. And I used a Flywheel to make sure that the ST170 dowels weren't protruding the plate. Alright, so the plate's bolted on. I haven't done everything up super tight, but it is, you know, fully bolted on. We've got the two countersunk bolts up here. We've got this bolt that goes through the back here. That's the one that I have my earth strap on. Then we've got the nut and bolt either side where the dowels are, the ST170 dowels that would have made sure the ST170 engine was perfectly lined up with the ST170 gearbox. And yeah, it appears that there is plenty of movement in this dowel at the bottom. Now, when I first did the ST170 and RX-8 conversion in Esther, I had a different sump fitted, and when I first put it together, I did it without shaving that dowel down. And the gearbox and engine was quite difficult to get together. You know, I'm just remembering this now. So what might have happened is when I first put it together, I may have bent the old adapter plate, and then the dowel was still tight between the adapter plate and the old sump, because I've obviously swapped sumps since I first did this conversion. But yeah, whatever the case may be, that dowel does now have free play, which means it's not going to stay still on its own when I go to mount the gearbox, which is bad, but it does mean that this is definitely not now going to bend this plate or cause any issues with alignment. Now, if we look around the back here, I don't think I'm ever going to get a spanner in between the plate and the sump, but there's enough of this dowel sticking out this side of the sump that I probably could put a couple of flats on it and then just about get a spanner on it, sort of, you know, here. So I'm going to take this plate back off, and then I'm going to get my generator out and modify this dowel with my angle grinder, and then put it all back together. And yeah, then we can crack on with the next step. Alright, so the plate is now back on and fully tightened up. I've ground over the heads of these countersunk bolts just to flatten those where they were protruding. It was only really this one that was protruding, but I've just done both of them just to be sure. And I've now got some flats on the back of that dowel, so that when I'm attaching the gearbox, I should be able to get a spanner on it. Something like that. Oh, and I did actually shave a little bit more off the back of that dowel just to be 100% sure. Probably didn't need to, and I hope I haven't weakened it. But yeah, that's sweet. So a new plate is now installed. Now I'm fast running out of the time that I've got around here today. But next up, let's get the flywheel reinstalled. These Z-Tech and ST170 flywheels can only go on in one orientation. Like that. And we are, of course, going to be using these ARP flywheel bolts. As per the ARP instructions, I used Loctite 242 on the threads of the bolts. And then I used the ARP lube under the heads of the bolts. A couple of blobs on each bolt is enough, and it will spread itself when you do the bolts up. Just like that. With all the bolts gradually nipped up, it was time to torque the flywheel up to spec. So I put a bar on the front of the crank to stop it spinning, and then I torqued it up to 50 foot-pounds first, and then to 85 foot-pounds as per the instructions. Double check them. And that is done. Now, I mentioned in the recent video that one of the issues I've got with my RX-8 conversion is the fact that my clutch arm, you know, the hydraulic clutch setup, doesn't have any free play at all once it's all bolted together and the slave cylinder is bled up. And you do need a slight amount of free play. Now, not having free play can mean that your clutch slips, and that's not an issue that I've experienced, but it probably is meaning that my release bearing is constantly under pressure and constantly spinning, whereas it should only be under pressure when you press the clutch. So I explained before that one way of curing this is to basically make this ball here, which this clutch arm leans against, further back. But some of you guys actually suggested a different way of achieving that free play. So over here, still attached to the car, we've got Esther's hydraulic clutch slave cylinder. Basically, this mounts to the gearbox, and when you press your clutch, this rod is forced out by the hydraulic fluid, and that's what makes your clutch engage. Now, if I take this off, yeah, just sits in there. And what some of you guys have suggested is that I shorten this rod, which will be a much simpler way of achieving the same thing as modifying that ball on the gearbox. So that's what I intend to do. Most people seem to think that you need to, either modify the ball or this by 5mm. This is literally just a bit of metal. It's covered in grease, but it's got a nice rounded end on it. So yeah, basically, when the time comes to put this back together, I'm just going to cut 5mm off of this. I'll try and round it as best as I can with a grinder, and then once I've confirmed that I've got the length right, I can probably get carload or precision engineer to make it a properly nice round end on it, or maybe even just make me up one of these exactly the same. But yeah, I'll just show you. Basically, this sits in there like that, and then when you press your clutch, it just moves the arm like this. So instead of moving this pivot point back, you're essentially shortening this, which should, give you the same results. Obviously, if you do it too much, then you won't get enough engagement on the clutch. But I really don't think that's going to be an issue with my setup, because I actually had too much engagement on my clutch before, and I had to fit a pedal stop to prevent that. So yeah, I think worst comes to worst, if I took an extra millimetre off than I need to, then I'll probably just be able to adjust my pedal stop to give me a little bit more throw at the pedal end. But yeah, shortening that rod seems a way more easier way of achieving the free play than starting to mess about with the ball in the gearbox. Hello, into a new day, and I'm back around the garage. I'm actually finding it a bit difficult to get round here as often as I would like lately, because I'm looking after my dad, and if you watch the on-track videos, you'll know what I'm talking about there. Today I'm around the garage with my beautiful girlfriend Kat, and we're actually supposed to be going down the coast today, but I needed to get some things done first. Since the last clip, I've removed Esther's gearbox, and before I did that, I roughly marked the tunnel where I think I need to cut it to give me the clearance I need to make gearbox removal and refitting easier in the future. What I'm probably going to do is cut those bits out of the tunnel, then refit the engine, and then try and refit the gearbox with the engine in situ, and basically make sure I've cut enough out before I then go and weld bits of metal in to fill the holes. But I'm not going to be cracking on with that today. One thing I do keep forgetting to mention to you guys though, is that I now have a range of these Race Tech gauges available on my website at marcushayesuk.com. So if you're in the market for some Race Tech gauges, head over to my website and see what I've got. Now, since I was filming here the other day, I've had my clutch plate back from Helix Motorsport with its new centre spline section fitted. I didn't need to change the pads, there's still plenty of meat on them, and yeah, getting this centre replaced was a lot cheaper than buying a whole new clutch plate. So before I leave here today, I want to get the clutch installed onto Esther's engine. I'm going to reuse the old pressure plate. I am going to give that a good clean. I'll give the friction plate a good clean as well. I'm going to use this input shaft as an alignment tool, and yeah, thanks to a bit of video editing, this should take about 10 seconds. Right, so that's the clutch reinstalled, which means this engine's finally ready to go back in the bay once I've dealt with enlarging the tunnel a bit. Right, before we do get out of here, I'll give you a quick look at John's latest acquisition. And John, you were saying you don't actually know what this is called. It's some sort of Triumph kit car, right?
It's a 1969 Triumph kit car based on a Herald. That's all I can tell you, bud.
Cool. And what size engine's this?
1250.
1250. Cool. Someone's had a go at painting the engine and that, it looks like, in the past. But yeah, loving the green with the black. Obviously, I'm a fan of dechroming things, but give you a quick look at the cockpit. Really cool wooden steering wheel. And yeah, yet another addition to John's vast collection. Right, I need to get myself packed up and get out of here, because we are going to be getting down the coast way later than planned. All right, so we've made it to Worthing on the south coast of England. Don't think I've ever been here before. We've only got half a day left because, yeah, what I needed to do earlier took a bit longer than planned and we got stuck in traffic down here. But yeah, we're going to spend a few hours down here. The weather is awesome. Definitely fancy ice cream. And later on, we're actually going to be going to Chelsea Cruise. Alright, so just got back home after an awesome evening at Chelsea Cruise. Got to check out plenty of cool cars, got chatting to plenty of cool people, and it made a really decent end to an awesome day. Now with Esther's ST170 engine ready to go back in her bay, I need to find time soon to get back round to her garage to crack on with modifying the tunnel and all that sort of thing, and then we can realistically think about getting Esther back on the road. Still got a couple of things to suss out with her new dash as well. So yeah, busy times ahead, but I'm absolutely loving it. The next video though is going to be about Maud, my Maud Mk1 Escort. I've already started making some changes to her, one of which I know loads of you are going to be happy about. But yeah, for now, I'm going to end this video here. Don't forget, if you want to get your hands on some of the new merchandise, definitely head over to my website and jump on the pre-order. And I will get all the pre-order stuff sent out to you guys as soon as I can after the end of the pre-order. There's still loads of other bits of merchandise and parts and stuff on my website, so yeah, definitely go and check it out. If you're new to the channel, definitely subscribe to keep up to date with future uploads. Feel free to follow me on Facebook, TikTok and Instagram. Massive thanks as always to my patrons for your ongoing support. But other than that, until next time, thanks for watching.